The McDonald family arrived in West Virginia in the early 1980s, a family seeking a fresh start. Parents Jim and Debbie McDonald, along with their 6 children, had been searching for a house that offered space, seclusion, and the promise of a peaceful life. Their previous home, while modest, had been cramped. They wanted a place where the children could run freely, where the family could bond, and where they could leave the stress of city life behind. When they found the house, it seemed perfect. An old farmhouse set on a hillside surrounded by thick woods. Large rooms, high ceilings, wide hallways, all seemingly ordinary. The kind of house that would normally feel warm and inviting. The family moved in quickly, eager to start anew. Boxes were unpacked, furniture arranged. Children ran through the halls with laughter. For a few days, the house was just a house. But soon, subtle changes began to occur. At first, small things. Doors left closed the night before were open in the morning. Objects were shifted, though no one could remember moving them. Children claimed to see shadows out of the corner of their eyes. Debbie felt sudden chills in empty rooms, cold spots that seemed to linger. Jim dismissed it at first, attributing it to the house settling, drafts from old windows, or simply the imagination of children in a new environment. The first serious incident occurred one evening while the family was eating dinner. The table, carefully set, shook violently as if an invisible hand had grabbed it. Dishes rattled. Chairs scraped across the floor. The children screamed, and even Jim felt a moment of panic. Nothing in the house could explain the movement. The floors were level, the wind outside calm, no pets or intruders present. From that night, the activity intensified. Objects were no longer just moved. They were thrown. Doors slammed with no one there. Windows rattled though the wind was still. Cold spots appeared unpredictably, freezing a single spot in a room while the rest remained normal. Whispered voices echoed through the halls, often repeating the family's names, sometimes mocking, sometimes indistinct, but always unsettling. The family began to sleep lightly, dreading the night, fearing the unknown. Neighbors noticed the change as well. The McDonald children began to act strangely, whispering about shadows in corners and things that moved when adults weren't looking. Debbie confided in a neighbor that she felt constantly watched, that her home no longer felt safe. While some dismissed her concerns as stress from the move, others recalled the house's history. Stories whispered of previous occupants who left abruptly, claiming the place was haunted. The first police involvement came after an incident that could no longer be ignored. Jim and Debbie awoke in the middle of the night to the sound of a crashing noise from the children's room. Rushing in, they found the bed overturned, furniture in disarray, and their youngest child crying in fear. Police officers arrived, taking statements and inspecting the house, but found no evidence of forced entry, natural causes, or tampering. Yet the family insisted the events had occurred exactly as described. Officers themselves would later report feelings of unease while inside the house. Sudden cold, the sensation of being watched, shadows flickering in peripheral vision. Despite attempts to rationalize, the family could no longer deny that something unusual had taken residence in their home. The activity became daily, even hourly. The youngest children would refuse to enter certain rooms, claiming they didn't feel right. Lights flickered inexplicably. Electrical devices malfunctioned, and heavy furniture shifted on its own. Debbie began to pray constantly, while Jim attempted to maintain a rational perspective, seeking logical explanations. The logic failed. Even the most skeptical moments were interrupted by phenomena that could not be accounted for. One particularly terrifying episode occurred late one night. Jim was alone in the living room when a heavy chair, sitting upright and unmoving moments before, flew across the room, narrowly missing him. The movement was swift, precise, and clearly intentional. For the first time, Jim considered the possibility that something malevolent was present, something intelligent and aware of their presence. That night, the family held an emergency meeting. They discussed moving, calling in paranormal investigators and documenting every occurrence. They understood that this was no longer a minor disturbance. This was something persistent, unpredictable, and frightening. The children's reactions grew more extreme. Some reported seeing figures in their rooms, tall, dark, faceless silhouettes standing silently at the foot of their beds. Others heard whispers directly in their ears, voices that were not their parents, siblings, or neighbors. Sleep deprivation became a real threat. The children awoke screaming, some with scratches or bruises appearing overnight. The sense of dread was constant. Even during the day, the house seemed oppressive. Cold spots would appear suddenly in hallways. Objects would fall without warning. Whispers echoed from empty rooms. The McDonalds realized they were living inside a nightmare that had no pause, no safe moment. Debbie began keeping detailed notes, recording every incident, every time an object moved, every whisper or unexplained sound. Jim installed cameras and tape recorders in an attempt to capture proof. But every recording revealed anomalies too strange to be easily explained. Shadows that shifted independently of light sources. Sounds of voices too faint to be recognized, yet undeniably present. One camera, left in the children's room, captured a dresser drawer sliding open and closed repeatedly, though no one had entered the room. The house's history was researched. Previous occupants had reported strange noises, objects moving, and a sense of being watched. Some had abandoned the property abruptly. Local lore hinted at restless spirits tied to the land, though no specific story explained the level of activity the McDonalds experienced. It seemed the house itself was a focal point for an unknown force, perhaps tied to the land, perhaps to previous trauma, or perhaps to something beyond human understanding. By the end of the first year, the McDonald family had adapted to a terrifying rhythm. Days were cautious, nights were tense. Each sound, each flicker of shadow, was met with anxiety. Yet despite fear, they remained in the house, unwilling or unable to leave. Friends and relatives offered alternative housing, but the family felt trapped, bound by circumstance and a strange curiosity, a desire to understand what haunted them. Outside observers, including paranormal researchers, arrived to investigate. They documented cold spots with thermometers, recorded audio anomalies, and noted the precision of object movement. Some phenomena were subtle, a book sliding from a shelf. Others were overt, a chair hurled across a room. The family, once ordinary, had become witnesses to a level of activity that few could imagine. Police reports, neighbors' testimonies, and family notes combined to create a dossier that remains unsettling to this day. The first part of the McDonald haunting was complete. The family had moved into a new home seeking peace and space, but instead found terror, uncertainty, and forces beyond their comprehension. What began as whispers and subtle disturbances escalated into a constant, intelligent presence. The house that should have been a haven had become a cage, a stage for phenomena that no human explanation could contain. And though the family hoped for relief, no solution appeared. The McDonald house had announced itself, and it was far from finished. The terror inside the McDonald house did not wane. It grew sharper, louder, and more aggressive with each passing week. What had begun as whispers and cold spots escalated into phenomena that could no longer be rationalized, measured, or ignored. By the second year, every corner of the house seemed alive with a presence, an intelligence observing, manipulating, and, at times, attacking. It started with the objects. At first, small things. Books sliding from shelves, chairs shifting slightly when no one was near. But soon the disturbances became impossible to ignore. Heavy furniture would topple, lamps shattered on the floors, dishes flew from counters as if hurled by unseen hands. The family was careful to document every incident. Debbie McDonald's notebook grew thick with entries. Time, location, witnesses present, and detailed description of each occurrence. The children, once frightened but resilient, began to dread daily life in the house. Every room carried the potential for danger. Cold spots, once isolated, now seemed to follow family members. Walking through a hallway, Jim would feel a sudden freezing chill in a single spot, as though the very air itself was alive. Doors would slam behind him. Shadows flickered at the edge of vision, always just beyond direct sight, leaving a lingering sense of being watched. Even the family dog became uneasy, growling at empty corners, refusing to enter certain rooms. By this time, police involvement had intensified. Officers were called repeatedly after disturbances, often at night. When they arrived, the phenomena would occur with intensity, doors opening and closing, objects moving, strange sounds echoing through the halls. Police reports documented that even seasoned officers felt a sense of dread inside the house. Some experienced sudden chills or the sensation of being pressed down by unseen hands. Others reported fleeting shadows that vanished as they turned to confront them. The McDonald's case became something the authorities could not easily dismiss. Audio and visual recordings began. Jim installed cameras and tape recorders throughout the house. The results were unsettling. Cameras captured chairs sliding, heavy furniture shifting, doors swinging open and closed without cause. Audio devices recorded low, unintelligible whispers, often repeating the family members' names. Occasionally, a clear voice could be discerned, though it was hollow, distorted, and almost inhuman. Researchers reviewing the footage described the phenomenon as unquestionably anomalous, though its origin remained unexplained. The children suffered the most. They awoke screaming, their beds disturbed, as if someone had moved them. Scratches, bruises, and unexplained marks appeared on their arms and legs. Some claimed to see figures, tall, shadowy, and faceless, standing silently in their rooms. At times, they whispered to each other about being followed, about the sense that the presence was learning their patterns, aware of their movements, aware of their fears. Debbie McDonald, desperate to protect her children, attempted traditional remedies. She prayed constantly, sprinkled salt around doorways, and called spiritual counselors. Jim tried scientific approaches, measuring temperature, checking structural anomalies, examining drafts and wiring. Yet nothing could account for the intensity or intelligence of the phenomena. It seemed to adapt to any intervention, avoiding detection, amplifying its presence when challenged. One night, the activity escalated to violence. A heavy dresser flew across the room, narrowly missing Jim. The children were crying, huddled together in terror. The family's sense of safety was gone. Even daylight brought no comfort. Shadows seemed to linger in corners. Objects would slide slowly across floors when no one was watching. And always, the whispers persisted, soft, menacing, and eerily familiar. Local neighbors began to take notice. They reported seeing lights flickering in the house at odd hours, hearing loud bangs or screams echoing across the property. Some approached, cautiously offering support, but the reputation of the house spread quickly. Many avoided the property altogether, fearing that the McDonald's experiences were not only real but dangerous. Paranormal investigators arrived, eager to document the case. Thermometers, cameras, audio recorders, and notebooks were deployed to track activity. Many reported phenomena they could not explain. Sudden temperature drops in isolated spots, objects moving without contact, inexplicable sounds. A few captured fleeting images of shadowy figures, though these were often dismissed as artifacts. Still, the consensus among investigators was clear. The house exhibited an unusual combination of intelligent and physical manifestations. Physical attacks became part of daily life. Objects hurled through rooms often aimed at family members. Chairs tipped, lamps shattered, and sometimes the children were struck by items moving seemingly with intent. Debbie would intervene, attempting to shield the children. Jim would stand firm, trying to understand the nature of the force. Yet every effort met with resistance, as if the presence were testing boundaries, observing, and exerting control over the house. The family grew increasingly isolated. Friends were reluctant to visit. Extended family worried for the children's safety. Even law enforcement appeared cautious, some officers refusing to enter after dark, citing an unshakable feeling of unease. The house had become an entity unto itself, a nexus of fear and unexplained energy, dominating the lives of everyone inside. Amidst the chaos, the McDonald's maintained meticulous records. Dates, times, locations, descriptions of objects moving, and sounds heard were all documented. These records became invaluable for researchers attempting to analyze the events. Some suggested psychological explanations, mass hysteria, stress, or childhood imagination. Others believed that genuine paranormal presence was at work, citing the physicality of the disturbances and the consistency across multiple observers. Despite the intensity, life had to continue. Children went to school, Jim continued work, and Debbie managed household chores. But the house demanded attention, vigilance, and constant preparation. Meals were interrupted by sudden crashes. Nights were fraught with fear, sleep broken by objects flying, footsteps echoing in empty halls, and the ever-present whispers. The McDonald's were prisoners in their own home, bound by walls that no longer felt protective. As months turned into years, the haunting did not abate. Investigators returned repeatedly, documenting similar activity each time. Police reports accumulated. Witness accounts multiplied. Yet the house remained enigmatic. No force, natural or human, could be found responsible. The McDonald's, exhausted but determined, endured, not because they had answers, but because there were none. By the end of Part 2, the McDonald family had confronted an unrelenting presence that defied explanation, law, and logic. The house had escalated from minor disturbances to intelligent, violent, and terrifying phenomena. The world outside was aware. Police, neighbors, and researchers had all documented incidents that challenged their understanding of reality. And yet, the source remained a mystery. The McDonald family lived in fear, isolation, and uncertainty. Each day brought new tests, new horrors, and new questions. And still, they remained. The house, now fully realized as a site of unexplainable activity, had claimed their attention, their energy, and their peace. Years had passed since the McDonald family first moved into the farmhouse on the hills of West Virginia. What had begun as a hopeful new chapter in their lives had evolved into an ongoing nightmare. The intensity of the activity had not lessened. The house had become a living entity, unpredictable and unrelenting, a constant reminder that some things resist human understanding. After enduring months of escalating disturbances, objects flying, whispers echoing, cold spots freezing rooms, furniture moving as if guided by unseen hands, the family faced an impossible choice. Could they remain in the home they had once dreamed of as a haven, or should they abandon it entirely? The decision weighed heavily. Leaving meant surrendering their possessions, memories, and sense of stability. Staying meant continued terror, sleepless nights, and the psychological strain on the children, who had been most affected. Ultimately, the McDonald's chose to leave, but the memory of the house remained vivid and terrifying. Friends and family helped them relocate, but the trauma lingered. The children carried the imprint of the haunting into adolescence, often reluctant to discuss the details, yet haunted by memories of shadows, flying objects, and whispers in the dark. Even as adults, some admitted to feeling the presence lingered in their minds, a psychological echo of the events that had dominated their youth. Investigators, paranormal enthusiasts, and skeptics continued to study the house long after the family's departure. Police reports, photographs, audio recordings, and the family's meticulous notes became central pieces of evidence. Witnesses repeatedly attested to events too unusual to ignore. Objects moved with force, voices responded to questions, shadows appeared and vanished, and sudden cold spots defied natural explanation. These accounts solidified the McDonald house as one of the most intriguing unsolved paranormal cases in American history. Despite attempts to rationalize the events, no consensus emerged. Skeptics proposed theories ranging from psychological hysteria to trickery or environmental explanations. Air currents causing objects to shift, electrical issues affecting light and sound, or stress-induced hallucinations. Yet even the most thorough examinations could not account for the violent physical manifestations, the documented police experiences, or the consistency of multiple witnesses over time. Journalists and local historians chronicled the story in newspapers and archives, bringing wider attention to the case. The tale of the McDonald family house spread beyond West Virginia, captivating the public imagination. The house became a symbol of unexplained phenomena, a place where ordinary people encountered forces beyond comprehension. Researchers noted the significance. It was not merely a family's anecdotal experience, but a case involving physical evidence, multiple witnesses, and official documentation, making it one of the rare reports bridging folklore and recorded history. Paranormal investigators revisited the house repeatedly, using evolving technology, thermometers, audio recorders, cameras, and later, more advanced devices designed to detect electromagnetic anomalies. Many claimed to witness strange activity themselves, flickering shadows, unexplained cold spots, and objects moving seemingly without human intervention. While the causes remained unconfirmed, these investigators helped cement the McDonald case as a canonical haunting, referenced in books, television programs, and research papers on unexplained phenomena. The family themselves became reluctant spokespeople, torn between a desire to warn others and a wish to live in peace. They recounted episodes in interviews, emphasizing the fear, the intensity, and the unpredictability of the house. Yet, even in speaking publicly, they were careful to acknowledge the limits of explanation. No one could say for certain why the events had occurred, or whether the house itself was imbued with energy, haunted by spirits, or simply an unfortunate intersection of circumstance and human perception. Some historians and researchers speculated on the source of the haunting. Previous occupants reportedly left under mysterious circumstances. The land had long been steeped in Appalachian folklore, tales of restless spirits, tragedies, and unexplained occurrences. Could the house have absorbed the energy of prior events? Could the soil, the structure, or even natural phenomena be amplifying something beyond the ordinary? No definitive answers emerged. The case remained unsolved, and that ambiguity contributed to its enduring fascination. Psychologically, the impact on the McDonald family was profound. Children who had once played freely now experienced lingering anxiety, hypervigilance, and mistrust of empty spaces. The adults, though more rational, endured a persistent sense of unease, haunted by memories of flying objects, cold spots, and whispered voices. Family therapy, counseling, and time helped, but the events left scars that could not be fully erased. This human toll, the fear, trauma, and disruption of normal life, became as significant as the physical manifestations themselves. Culturally, the McDonald house contributed to the broader understanding of haunted houses in American folklore. It became a reference point for researchers studying poltergeists, paranormal activity, and cases with multiple witnesses and physical evidence. Television programs, documentaries, and books drew upon the events, presenting audiences with a rare haunting that had tangible evidence and credible witnesses. Unlike urban legends or purely anecdotal tales, the McDonald story was grounded in documented occurrences, lending it an unsettling realism. The house itself became an object of fascination. Paranormal investigators revisited the property decades later, sometimes attempting to document lingering activity. Neighbors spoke cautiously of the property's reputation. Some claimed to hear noises or see flickers in windows, even when the house was empty. Others dismissed such accounts as imagination or rumor. The house became a symbol of unresolved fear, a reminder that some mysteries resist human understanding and defy closure. The McDonald family story endures because it intersects with universal human experiences: the desire for safety, the vulnerability of home, and the confrontation with forces beyond comprehension. The house that should have offered peace became a crucible of terror. The family struggled to endure, to protect their children, and to document the inexplicable resonates with anyone who has faced uncertainty, danger, or the unknown. The haunting remains officially unsolved. No explanation, natural, psychological, or supernatural, satisfies all witnesses and investigators. The house continues to be referenced in discussions of poltergeists and unexplained phenomena. Researchers cite the McDonald family as an example of a haunting with credible documentation, police involvement, multiple witnesses, and repeated physical manifestations. It occupies a unique place in American paranormal history, a real-life horror story without resolution, a nightmare anchored in reality. In the end, the story of the McDonald family is not only about the house or the phenomenon itself. It is about the human experience of fear, the boundaries of perception, and the limits of explanation. It is about a family forced to confront what they could neither understand nor escape. The house remains silent now, yet the echoes of its activity endure in records, in testimonies, and in the collective imagination of those who study or hear of it. The McDonald family's nightmare continues to haunt in memory, in legend, and in the very idea that some houses and some events defy resolution. It is a story of terror without closure, a haunting that persists long after the family left, a real-life mystery that reminds us how fragile the line is between ordinary life and the inexplicable. And in every retelling, the air seems colder, the shadows deeper, and the question remains: what truly occurred in that West Virginia farmhouse? What force claimed the McDonald family's peace, and why? Some may never know. Some may only feel it in the creak of a floorboard, the flicker of a shadow, or the whisper of a name in the dark. The house remains empty, yet alive in legend. The family moves forward, carrying the story as both warning and testament. The McDonald haunting is unresolved, terrifying, and undeniable. A reminder that some horrors are rooted not just in imagination, but in the fragile reality of what can be witnessed, recorded, and yet never fully explained.